Oh, Mike. I'm telling you that I can absolutely appreciate um, in Texas right now, it's marching season. That's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And right now we're in that sweltering, incredibly hot part
Yeah.
of the season. Um,
It
you
was
know what's
90
crazy?
degrees this morning at 9 o'clock.
My sophomore year of high school, we started in this kind of if you're not if you're listening to us somewhere else, for us, we're talking like 100 plus for most of August. And by the way, we have a great podcast about dealing with the heat if you
Oh
want
yeah.
to go check that out. Um, but what was crazy, my sophomore year, we went to marching contest. We started in 100-degree heat in the beginning of it, and it was sub-zero. Oh, not sub-zero, but it was snowing, sleeting at contest. So we go through the full switch here in
Yeah.
Texas when we talk marching bands. And a lot of times, what we do in the process, we have people come help our bands. We have clinics. We have other directors come just kind of hang out, and they give us positive feedback. That's all cool. But I'm asking Mike today, are there things that we can do on our own? Are there some strategies, some things that you could share with us that will help us right now on our own improve our marching bands?
Oh yeah. Oh
I mean,
yeah.
is it just some best practice kind of things or
Yeah, and they just happen to be things I've learned from clinicians who've come work my band.
you took notes?
I took notes, and now I pass them on. Hopefully, someone can benefit. And from this whole podcast, even if as a listener, if you get like one or two or three things for your bag of tricks, it'll be a success. You know what I mean? I'm
Exactly.
not saying you have to do it Mike Lunney's way. That'd be ridiculous.
You know, as I take my guys to conventions or conferences, I always say, find the one thing. Find that
Yeah,
one thing that made this whole thing worthwhile. So I'm going to say this up front. Um, I think it's good to know yourself. And I have a hard time not jumping in and stepping all over things that you're talking about. There's a chance this might be more than one episode. So let's just
yeah,
go into it knowing that because I want you to make sure that you have the opportunity to share these things and that people have a chance to actually hear things that are going on. So um, start us off just to see how this goes. What's your first point that you would make that would, or a strategy or thought that would make our marching band better?
yeah. And the points I don't have them necessarily listed here in order, but they just kind of how they kind of came out of my brain. But it's the thoughts of the result of 35 years of mistakes, trying to make things work right. And then find out a way to do it better. Number one on here, and this is kind of a touchy point for some directors. If you can play correctly in tempo with a metronome, you can march in tempo. I've gone to so many times with a band program that don't use a metronome for their rehearsal, and I know that's a touchy point because some people are like, "Oh, the tempo should be instilled in the band," and they've got. I respect that, but if they don't have a metronome going, it's really hard to work drill. You if you can play correctly in tempo, then you have a chance to march in tempo. But that's usually the issue is that they just don't use a metronome. And the metronome must come from the back of the field. It can't
Okay,
be in
whoa,
front.
whoa.
It can't
Say
be in
that
front of the
again.
band. Yeah, the metronome has to be in the back of the field. There's no way to shortchange that. You
So
know,
from the tower or up in the stands, it
oh
needs to
God,
be
no.
fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, mistakes because it just made more sense to me because I could be right next to my metronome and I could put a little long ranger speaker on the deer stand, deer blind, and I
Sure.
could play for them. But they've got to realize that when every sound happens on the field, it's like throwing a tennis ball at the speed of sound to the press box. And we want all the tennis balls at that given beat in the music to hit the press box at the same time. So the only way that can happen is if the metronome's behind the band because those tennis balls gets thrown. It's kind of a weird analogy. The tennis balls are thrown as the sound reaches those kids in the ensemble, and then finally
Right.
the front ensemble. Then all those tennis balls go whoomp, and they hit the press box at the same time. If you put the
Okay.
metronome in front, then what's the first thing that's going to hit the press box is the front ensemble. The last thing that'll hit the press box is the battery percussion or tubas behind them, so forth. So it is a mess. Oh, it's a mess. So
Okay.
just have the metronome behind them. which also means that you can't count the band off with your speakers in front of the band.
Huh.
Think about that. I can't go one
Right.
and two and ready play because I won't be with the metronome, will I?
Right.
Because the metronome's
Got it.
actuating the beat before I say things. So you got to train your band to start with metronome start. Eight
Okay.
clicks we're
Cool.
in. Okay. Um, Another one that's really common when I adjudicate bands or go help bands, and was real common in my band to not do correctly, was take all available counts to reach your drill set. Generally, take equal size steps. So if you have 16 counts to get there, you can't take 14 big giant steps and two little tiny steps or whatever other means you have. Or some kids will get there and mark time for 4 counts because they got to their set. Okay, so take all available counts. We really need to push upon the kids. This is a hard one. The drill is not the dots on the field. It's not the picture. The drill is what happens between the dots.
Okay.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's like, because kids don't think that way. And sometimes directors don't think that way. They think as long as we get all the sets right, it doesn't matter what happens between. We got to our spot at measure 4, measure 8, measure whatever. But the actual drill is the flow of students between set points. And so that all has to be taken into account. And the easiest thing, take equal size steps. I always tell them it's like sharing a pizza. You want all the pieces to be the same size, you know? So if you have 8 slices of pizza, make all 8 slices the same size, chop this up into 8 steps, and make it work.
Okay. That's it's interesting because I remember there have been times when you have to figure out what size that step is. It takes some
Yeah.
rehearsal to figure out what that size actually is. But
And
okay,
I tell you a way to
cool
be
concept.
proactive on that is I would have the kids stand in one set and then they mark it or however you do your drill, and then go stand in the next set, find it, then come back to your first set, and then I have the kids point at their dot and say that's 16 counts, and I point halfway. That's 8
Oh yeah,
steps. Point halfway, that's 4 until you get down to 1. That's the size of your step. Does that fix everything? No, but it sure does help because those kids break it down in their brain that I've got to be
right.
to
And it
here
gets them
by
thinking.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah, they start thinking that it has to be equal. Okay.
cool.
Another one, use subsets to clean drill. If it's a 16 count move, force them to stop at 8. Go 8 steps and stop, and then have them look at it. They'll look around and go, oh my gosh, now my intervals are all messed up and I'm right on top of one other person and it's someone 6 steps behind me. And so get them to fix that subset, somewhere in there. You can go by 8 steps, 4 steps, and that helps a bunch. Okay. Pulse in all this whole situation for marching band. For me, I think pulse is the key to everything. Use a metronome to set and maintain tempo while learning and cleaning drill and music. You use it all the time. From the first day of marching fundamentals, we use a metronome to snap them to attention, to go to parade rest, just to ingrain in their brain that the metronome starts and stops. And again, it's kind of the quiet part out loud because some directors are offended by the fact that, we're so reliant on a metronome. I respect that in concert band. We can use the met as a tool. Marching band, it's not just a tool, it's a necessity. You will not have a good marching band without a metronome. And I've had people say, I just can't afford to get the equipment to have a metronome. Man, just get an old bass amp and a Dr. Beat. You spend more on reeds than you would on a metronome in marching season.
Right.
So figure it out somehow. Beg, borrow, steal someone else's metronome. I don't know. But just steal it at the game. Just put it on your trailer. But somehow you've got to get a hold of a metronome to work every single day. And will it drive you crazy as a director? Yes, it will. It will
Will it
you
drive
insane.
everybody in the neighborhood crazy?
Oh,
Yes, it will.
yeah, it will. Plus, it's just aggravating because it just dings all the time. But also, it points out every single mistake. We
Right.
can't cheat with a metronome going. Okay. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about that because when we used to march at our practice field at Wiley, there were really no other houses around us. And by the time I left, there was an apartment complex across the street, and there were calls to the superintendent. Why are they practicing
Sure.
at 6:45 in the morning? It's like we were here first. Leave us alone. Yeah. So, but I can understand their rationale at 7 in the morning to hear ding, 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 and hear percussion warm up. I'm sure that was really a great way to start their morning.
So here's an interruption for you.
Okay, go for it.
This is such a part of my world that I'm a jogger,
Yeah.
or have been, and I my daughter is as well. My
Okay.
daughter can listen to any music, any tempo, and still run at the speed that she wants to run.
I think I know where you're going. Go for it.
I can't.
That's
I
right.
have to intentionally pick. I started at 120 beats per minute
Yeah.
because my feet are going to land on the beat at 120 beats per minute. So if I want to go faster, I pick faster songs
Yeah.
because it's so ingrained in me that
That's
that
right.
beat is where my feet are going to hit all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's probably the goal in marching band. Makes it a little tough to jog, but
Yeah, it does. We call it strolling in marching band. But I can help you out. I've got a list from 78 beats per minute to 170 beats per minute at 2 beat increments, a list of pop tunes.
share.
Yeah, it's really cool because our kids, we'd use the metronome, of course, but we would use that in summer band in lieu of our metronome because the kids could feel, even if it's old music that I liked, they could still hear music, and they
So
could stomp around.
a
But you're
secondary
right.
to that, by the way, when you're running, don't choose multimeter or songs that change. I'm a fan of Rush. I realize that has nothing to do with anything else, but they
Yeah,
have a whole lot of songs that use 5/4 or even 7/4, or
yeah,
it is really hard when you're going along in four to all of a sudden have a five.
yeah. You have to hop on one leg, I guess. I don't know.
All right, man. I'm distracted enough on that one. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
So
you're
pulse
good.
is
You're
the
good.
key.
Yeah, pulse is the key. And then another thing we have to really instill upon them, the integrity of the drill set comes first before your set point. Every
No, wait.
band,
What
or
does
go
that mean?
ahead. Well,
No, what
every
does that mean?
band, well, every band has that kid in there that I call him Mr. or Mrs. Set Point that you say, I need you to scoot over 4 inches to make this set look right. And they'll show me, but no, my set point is right here. And I understand that because I'm kind of that way. I'm OCD that way. But whenever you always fit to the form, you know what I mean? The drill chart, the UDB app, whatever method you learn drill by, that's merely to help you figure out where you're supposed to be. It kind of gets you in the ballpark. It gets you in the right tier, the right section, the right row, but you're not in the right seat until you adjust between the people around you. That's when you adjust. It doesn't put you in the right seat necessarily. So they all must be willing to adjust because I'd always sarcastically, when they would say that, said, "Oh, by all means, since you are correct, let me move 159 other people
Exactly.
to make sure that your set point is correct." And then they kind of roll their eyes, okay, and they scoot over their 5 inches or whatever. So it doesn't take
And
long, good natured
that's
way.
tougher now. We're from the era of screaming cover down,
Oh God, yeah.
make straight lines. But
Yeah, I
uh,
thought I was going to lose an arm or a leg if I didn't do it right. It was
but
pretty brutal.
anymore, some of the shapes have nothing to do with cover down. I
Oh
would
no, no.
assume.
In fact, hearkening to the old days, covering down in blocks, they're actually the hardest to march. It's
Right.
a much easier to get yourself through curvilinear forms because everyone just adjusts to the interval and there's a little bit of flex into it. But in straight lines files, one kid's out of the file. It's even Grandma Susie can go, that ain't right. So,
I can't tell you how many contests I sat in watching people go in 8-step intervals past a line. It's the easiest mistake in the world to spot.
yes. So
But
why
anyway,
do it? Yeah, but why do it? You know what I mean? Just write the drill different. Okay.
I
Um,
gave you a chance to say it.
yeah, that's right. If it's something that's really difficult to do, unless you're just wanting to show off the uh, expert prowess of your band, don't put it in the drill. Yeah, don't do a 32 count slide to the right at a
In white
180.
shoes.
Yeah, and white shoes with stripes on your pants. Yeah, unless you can actually do it. And if you can do it, more power to you. I never had a band that could do that. It's
Yeah.
hard, but I've seen bands do it. Okay. This is another one that sometimes is hard for especially young teachers, I think. And I'm just throw that out there. Teach only the technique marching wise needed for your show. because sometimes they learn all this stuff in college or they go march in a drum corps and they come back with all these wonderful ideas. And then they try to teach their band to do all this extra stuff that has nothing to do with actually what they're going to perform on Friday night. So you've got to be careful. I'll give you a real easy one that it took me a while to talk directors out of. You might have participated in this because I did as a student. Did you ever do drill downs?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. We all did drill downs. How many bands use drill downs for
That's what
halftime?
I think we've had this in
None.
conversation before. There's
There's
nobody
still
that does it.
there's still bands I go to and they're still doing drill downs. I think it's fun competitively, and the winner gets like an extra popsicle or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun. But we came from the time when whistles were blown and we knew when to do a segue right and a counter left, and we followed the
Yep.
twirlers, and and it made perfect sense. But why are we still doing it? It's the traditions or the
Exactly.
chains that bind us. And
Exactly.
if you're not just doing it for fun, then you don't need to be doing it. We never have a time when the drum major's barking out orders to see who messes up. That skill is not needed for the show. Yeah, yeah. That's not needed for the show. We don't call out about haste. We just don't do that anymore. And respect to my military friends, out in East Texas behind the pine curtain, there's a lot of military marching bands and they do that. So in their case, they should practice those techniques, and they
Sure.
should not practice fixing a curvilinear form by finding the focal point of the arc and having all the toes point to the focal point, because that doesn't apply to them. Teach the technique that applies to your band,
Right.
That's a tough one to get
Great
across.
point. Great point.
Because here I am doing a podcast telling all this information, but as a teacher, you find all these new ideas, and what do you want to do? You want to share them. You want to tell your
Yeah.
kids all this cool stuff you've learned. Another rule: it's not improving your marching band, but just something to think about. It takes about 10 years to really build a program. It takes 1 year to wreck one.
Oh, good.
You can
That
absolutely
is such a true statement.
destroy a program in one fall. Half the kids quit. You're not rehearsing the kids. You can go from a state finalist to a fifth division marching band in 3 months, but you can't hardly go from a fifth division marching band with lack of fundamentals to a state finals run in 3 months. It can't be done. The quickest I've seen it done is 3 years. Joe McGee at Holiday High School. He took over a band that had been a fifth division band, and 3 years later, he won the gold medal in Class 2A.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. So
So
he
go
kind of
ahead
broke
and
the rule.
flesh that out for me. As a thought, how is that going to help me improve my marching band?
Well, just remember that you have to teach them the right things in order to become better. If you've got to know enough to realize when you're teaching them things incorrectly. Bill Woods was a great mentor of mine, and I think this statement holds true. I don't know if it's been scientifically proven, but if you take a group of average intelligent teenagers, just good old average all-American teenagers, and let them run through the show all year, they'll at least make a 3 without any instruction whatsoever. They'll figure it out. Say, here's the
Right.
drill charts, drum majors, figure it out. Here's the music. Let's just play through it. You just play through it over and over. You'll make a third division. You have to teach them into a 2 or a 1, or you have to teach them into a 4 or a 5. If a band makes a 5, they've been taught to be a fifth division band.
I don't think people realize the validity of what you just said.
They don't. They don't
That
believe it either.
that it's really hard to make some of those lower ratings.
Yeah,
you
you've got
really have to be bad.
You have to teach hard. You have to really teach hard to get them to a fifth division. They'll blame the administration and they'll blame whatever, but generally I'll probably take flack for it, but generally it's an educator who's teaching exactly how to do things wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen a concert band where the kids came out, they got on stage, and my first inclination we were going to have problems is when they played their concert F, and all the clarinets raised up their clarinets and pointed them straight with the bell at the director. And I thought, good Lord Almighty, may the Lord have mercy on your souls. May the Lord have mercy on my ears, because you can only imagine sounding like one of those really bad Middle Eastern military bands. And they were literally taught to hold their clarinets. They didn't come up with that on their own. They were told to do that. They were told to make that sound. And I know there's times when things happen, but oh my goodness, I think the general rule stands. You have to teach
My
them.
wife and I went on a cruise, and we got off the boat to a Caribbean island band playing to welcome us all there, and we just cackled
Yeah.
and laughed and thought there is not a single characteristic sound
Yeah.
going on at all. So my back to your point, not only do you have to teach wrong hard, you have
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
it with conviction.
Yeah. And you have to do it to get a first division as well.
Right.
It's hard to make a one, it's hard to make a five. It can be done. It can be
It
done.
can be done.
It can
It's
be
a
done.
challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. We can make this work. So anyone who's I'll take the flack for that. So I'll say my email at the end. No. Uh, and here's a really important one that I think directors fall into this trap, especially really smart, good directors. As a
Okay.
general rule, if your concert band performs grade 4 literature, just insert your own numbers for this, then your marching band should perform grade 2 music. Think
Really?
about that. Yeah, because now they've got to march.
Here
Yeah,
say they have the
just
physical
because,
activity going with it.
yeah, if they played a grade 3s at concert contest and then now it's marching season, you want to play a grade 3 marching show, you're going to be fighting a really tough battle the whole year. I'm not saying you can't get it done, but man, you've got to gear your marching show to a lower level of music. I mean, we were a 4A state finalist with a grade 2 marching show.
Okay.
Think about that, and now granted, the ones that beat us were much stronger bands and they played harder music. They did. They did. I'll
Okay.
give them credit. They were much stronger than us, but we got to where we wanted to be at the time.
Help my ignorance. Do they grade marching arrangements the same way they do concert arrangements?
I don't know if the individual ones like through Hal Leonard and places like that, they'll say like easy, medium,
Big and easy. Yeah.
medium hard. And,
Okay.
they'll grade them that way. But like if you're buying a pre-prepared show that's going to be customized to your group, which is a big majority of our marching bands in Texas, whether through Luke McMillan or I had to give him a free plug. He's a good friend of mine. But there's a bunch of others too. But Randall Standridge does a lot of work in Texas. But they list their shows that way: grade 1 shows, grade 2 shows,
Okay.
grade 3 shows, and so they kind of do it by number of parts, difficulty of parts, technique involved. And so directors have a pretty good choice. But you got to remember too, Derek, that sometimes the grade level of what the composer and arranger thinks it is really doesn't match your band because only you know your band. They might have it as a grade 2, but it has really difficult woodwind parts. If it has
Okay.
that, then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, man, my woodwinds aren't very strong this year. So that's not really a grade 2 for me. That's like a grade 3. So I better stay away from that one. So you've got to
Does
kind of figure
the
that out.
does the Mike Lunney corollary for picking contest music apply? Play what you can for contest, play what
Yeah.
you want to in your spring concert or for in the stands.
Yeah. Yeah. The
You
stand
know what I
music is
mean?
easy as possible. And the other problem we make in terms of even marching music and concert music is the syndrome that I've seen in bands is I call it the acceleration syndrome. The acceleration syndrome is I played a grade 2 last year. So this year I'm going to play a grade 3 because we did really good on our grade 2. The problem with that that theory, it's not the same band.
Right.
So
Different
I see
kids.
I see directors make that mistake all the time, and I, for one, have made that mistake myself. So I know what it feels like. And you're like, hey, man, we did this, and at concert season we played we played a grade 3 and a grade 4. Man, the acceleration concept. Oh yeah, we need to play a grade 5 now. Boy, was that a battle. I mean, no one. We made a first division. I might say we were given a first division. We barely made it because we were a 3A band playing a grade 5 piece. So I think the
Wow.
adjudicators had a little bit of mercy. If it had been a 5A, 6A band, they would not have been as merciful. But it was kind of back to the beatings shall continue till right notes increase. At the end of that year, we all just were like, we were ready for May for contests. We were just hated rehearsal and it was
So
my fault. It was my fault.
here's another thought with that. And you see, here's an example that I already see coming. And listen, I don't think, especially in the top end classifications, it's not as prevalent as it used to be. But if something new, cool, movie, musical, everybody wanted to do a show that for instance, Wicked is coming out as a movie in November. So not
Hmm.
for this marching season, but next marching season, I can already see a whole bunch of re-releases of music, Wicked themed marching shows.
Right.
And my point, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The band director goes, I think that's so cool, or the orchestra or whatever you are. That's so cool, but we're talking about marching band today. I want to do that with my band. Well, maybe your band can't do that.
Right. Right.
And I know that there's so many shows now that have nebulous names. I'm a huge DCI fan. And so I always look at the title of the show and then I try to figure out what what fun reference they're making. Uh, you know, Blue Devils this year was romantic, and I
Romantics. Yeah.
had
With
to
an S
listen
on
to
the end.
the
Yeah.
uh how does this fit that title? But I think there's more and more of that. Our show this year is called Mystique, and all these songs are either arranged for us or written for us specifically. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, in your opinion, and maybe it doesn't matter, should we avoid the urge to be current or to be something that just because the band director thinks, I love this, it might not fit your group? Is
Right.
it, I mean, you're talking about playing down 2 grades as a
Hmm.
rule. Some things are really hard. Just because you love Chicago doesn't mean it fits your band.
Right. Or whether the kids will like it or not. I'm not saying we
Right.
have to pick our show just on the fact of whether the kids like it, but in stand tunes and shows, especially stand tunes, directors tend to pick music they liked.
Right.
Like I helped out with the Legacy Band, and went through stand tunes with them one afternoon or one morning, and half the tunes I'd never heard of, and that's a good thing.
Uh,
It was like different artists that were current to the kids, and they enjoyed it. Now, if I pass out YMCA and the Horse and Eye of the Tiger and I don't know, things that were
Seven Nation
current.
Army.
Yeah, 7 8. Now that's still popular. Kids
Sure.
like that one for some reason. I guess just because it's fun. But yeah, you've got to kind of come to realization that your kids have to, at least they don't have to love what they're doing as far as music, because sometimes we have to get them to play music that's better for them. But there has to be a certain level of acceptance.
Sure.
I would probably not do a full blown Chicago show because it's such a past reference that the kids are going to go like, well, I don't understand this at all. With the DCI groups, I think this last year of finals that happened this last Saturday, oh my gosh, that was probably the best top to first to 12th place set of cores that's ever existed in DCI. And you're right.
Right.
Some of their shows like Phantom Regiment, Mind, MYND, and Boston with Glitch, and Blue
Right.
Devils with Romantics. Their shows they're pretty deep, and the only way I figure out what their shows are doing is to get on their webpage because they'll have little videos kind of explaining with their designers and stuff. And I find that
Program notes.
yeah, it's intensely interesting to me to figure out how did they think about this, so it's really cool. Even like the Blue Coats. This is a cool thing for you guys that are sound guys out there. Their program designers put microphones on the front of the field to catch the real thin mylar flags as they moved.
Yeah.
And that was actually fed into the audio feed with the band, and then it was filtered to where it was almost a synth kind of sound. So you could
That's
hear
cool.
that across the field as as the core was performing. And so, you catch kind of really cool ideas, but the band has to accept what you're doing. If you pick music that's too hard for them, man, you got to remember they got to move to it. Think
Right.
about your last chair trumpet player, your last chair clarinet. If they're going to be on the field, which in some bands they are, then it better be something they can at least piece through and be able to move their feet to. And otherwise, you're just for lack of a better phrase, you're just beating a dead horse.
Well, you even brought this up in our Heat episode that compared to when we were on the field, bands move a lot faster and a lot more strenuously
Oh yeah, it's
than we
it's
used to.
100 times more athletic. It really is. I mean, they're moving at 160 beats a minute. We moved at 120. They're doing body movement. I've worked with summer bands and they do choreo and body movement for like an hour and a half a day. We just marched up and down a field, man. And I try to do some of that with them, and I mess up my knees, and yeah, it's but yeah, it's you've got to realize they're athletically having to do things. I'm not going to compare it to like playing a football game, but I would compare it to some Olympic sports like breakdancing. No, I'm kidding. If breakdancing's an Olympic sport, marching band should be an Olympic sport because our band students do a whole lot more than those breakdancers did at the Olympics. So,
Okay. So to sum this point up, don't over
yeah,
program.
don't overprogram. Don't overprogram. It's best to, if you underprogram, it's not the end of the world. Just pick harder stand tunes.
Right. And just do
give
it
them
well.
something else to, yeah, just have them do it. Next thing is, work hard not to burn them out. Give more frequent water breaks. They work better than if you give infrequent, longer breaks. I signed a drum major to keep a timer. Even when I did marching fundamentals, I had 4 weeks in a row of summer bands that I did this summer, and I don't trust myself to keep up with when to give water breaks. I set a time, and I tell the drum major, said, you keep time and you stop me in the middle of anything. And you just say, Mr. Lunney, water break.
Water break.
And then I go, okay, water break. And we do our thing of a gush and go versus a water break, so you have different definitions of things. A gush and go is when you run to the side, gulp down water, chug water, slam it down, get back out there. A water break is they can go and sit their butt down for a little bit and kind of talk and kind of, rest a second kind of thing. So I have the drum majors do that so I don't have to think about them because they're working a whole lot harder than I am, Derek. So I can do a 4-hour rehearsal from the tower with my mister and a fan and my little cold water jug, and they're the ones.
And your floppy hat, right?
My floppy hat, yeah. So that I think that's something to think about. We're way past the days of, we'll give you water as a reward when you do this right.
Yeah,
and I've seen that still occur even as recently as last year. Do this run one more time, and we'll get you some water.
There's the famous band director line. Let's just run it one more time. One more time.
Don't ever say it with the conditions of, if you run this one more time and do it right, we'll give you water. Because, and we've said this before, but the safety and health of our students is job one. Liability is a really close job too. If you say that comment to an entire band and a kid passes out and has heat stroke, I feel for you, man. Because you just put to them that you get water as soon as you do it right. Water is, and I always tell every kid even against the normal band director rules of that group, I say you have access to water anytime you want it. Your water bottle stays on the front sideline, and you walk over and get a drink of water. If you need to sit down, we've gone through that with the health podcast with heat. But yeah, because number one, I am concerned with their health. I want them to be healthy. But number two, I don't want to be sued. I don't want to be speaking. I don't want to speak to an attorney and be in a deposition about why this
Mike
child
Lunney
got sick. Yeah, now has $6,000. Yeah, and doesn't why they have $6,000 worth of dental bills? Because they fell face first into the pavement. You feel for the kid, but it's like number two. It's like, man, I don't want to be in that situation. So just be smart about it. Be smart about it. Okay.
I think sometimes the harshest lessons come when, in retrospect, when we go, you know what, that was stupid.
Yeah. It was.
We didn't see it at the time, but it makes total sense when somebody face plants in the pavement.
Yeah. The kids are smarter, and they're just in a different society. We went outside at 8 a.m. and got back at 5 p.m. and rode bicycles and built forts and played baseball and drank out of garden hoses because our parents didn't let us in the house.
Even if it wasn't our garden hose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly right. I remember getting snacks at a friend's house. We just all go in. Hey, can we all have popsicles? So that's just how we lived our life. And nowadays, with my grandkids, I would not let them out of the house like that. It's just a different society. So they're more in air-conditioned environments. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay. The next thing is I always like to make a deal with the kids. This sounds real simplistic because it is. Just ask each kid to fix one mistake. If you have 80 kids in your band, that's 80 mistakes fixed on that drill set. Fix one mistake. Was it horn carriage? Was it a missed note? Was you stepped off with the wrong foot? Did you not use good foot technique? Did you not stop correctly? And so if you made 9 errors in marching and playing during the last run through, only make 8 this time. Then make 7. And it's kind of exponential, and it's kind of exciting for the band to say, raise your hand if y'all fixed one mistake. It's cool to see 70 hands go up. because you know right then that 70 mistakes were fixed. And it turns the educational thing. This is a big deal right here. This is probably the most important comment of all. You've got to turn your marching rehearsal into where they're all like little tiny band directors.
Okay.
And I'm just the one running the rehearsal instead of me being the fire hydrant telling everyone what they did wrong. Because their job, I always tell them, dark humor, Mike Lunney, I said, your job is to analyze, fix, adjust. Analyze, fix, adjust the whole time. And said, how long do you do that? Until you die. That's life. That's life until your final breath. You everything that happens to you, you think about it. You think about what you might need to do different, and then you make it happen. And
It's not
said,
just band, it's
it's
life.
not just Spain. This is life because this goes on till your dying breath, guys, till you're 95 years old and your deathbed. So this is how it's going to be. And so all of a sudden they're the ones, and you can ask them a really simple question, guys. You can say, "Raise your hand if you have a mistake and know how to fix it." You'd be shocked how many hands go up in the air. Said, "I got there too early, so I need to take smaller steps." Thank you. I got there way too late. I need to take bigger steps. My first step is too small. Very good. They start thinking, man. They're smart. So they don't need you to give them every bit of information. You
And it's
just have
almost
them analyze it.
almost like your good noise comment. When
Yes,
one
it's good
person says
noise.
that, when somebody says that out loud, somebody else goes, "Yeah, me too."
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. So they hear that and they go, hey, that's why I got there too early. And it don't over take for granted the fact that sometimes students don't know why they messed up.
Right.
They keep getting there early and we keep yelling at them, don't get to your set point early. Don't. And something as simple as take smaller steps, they don't know.
Right.
They just keep
And
getting there early.
and we keep
So
screaming, "Why can't you get this?"
that's right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's because someone hasn't been educated. Number one, me as a band director. Number two, them as a student. So we have to kind of figure it out. Okay. Another really cool way to kind of get things going. We call them all kinds of different things: band buddies, bigs and littles, big brother, big sister. I've seen
Right.
bands divided into 4 different tribes. It's like Survivor. So they have different things. Allow time at the beginning and end of rehearsals for those band buddies to meet. That way they can talk about what went good and what didn't go well. They can kind of visit on that, and they can give advice to each other, both directions. Allow them the opportunity to be sort of a band director.
Right. And I think it's probably easier for the person that's struggling to talk to a peer and get advice from a peer who's going to be positive and say, "Man, I was there one time. Here's
Yeah.
how I got through that." Yeah.
And they don't always want to, you know, address the director with such things, certainly not in front of the band. And I can
Right.
remember the true story. And I say this out of kind of ashamed, but we were going to the field and there was a freshman tagging along behind me. We're trying to get everybody out to the field. And this little freshman goes, I don't know where my flip folder is. Do you have any more flip folder music? And I go, yeah, there's some in the band hall. Where's that in the band hall? What are you doing? And he went through a series of questions. And finally I go, hey, welcome to the Wiley Pure Gold Band. Go get in your spot. So I didn't address one problem. And that kid ended up being a drum major later.
That's funny.
So welcome to the Pure Gold. Get in your spot. They barely had a mouthpiece on their horn, so, but yeah, but so they don't want to address the director because, I hate to say it, sometimes we can be a little short
Sure.
on questions, on answers, so
Well,
allow
our
the,
mind is on doing a lot of different things.
yeah, we're thinking about how the principal just chewed us out for messing up the
Right.
stadium field or whatever. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. And then the next one would be, we all do like playing exercises and warm ups and fundamentals. And I'm going to step on some toes on this one. All the band programs start doing them in summer band, and they'll do them about the first week of the fall season, and then they just kind of disappear. We got to work on drill, man. We got the show on the field. We don't have time for this, And so I would dare say, make sure to do at least a 5-minute block. Just 5 minutes. Just do some marching fundamentals and some playing fundamentals. And the way I could tie it together, which a lot of directors find this like some sort of ingenious, but I just stole it from other directors, tie the two together. So if you're doing box drills, play F. Remington, warm-ups,
Sure.
or do measures in the show while you're doing a box drill or 8/8 or whatever. But don't drift away from those marching fundamentals because I promise you I've done it and I paid for it dearly. Okay, you've still got to do the marching fundamentals every day, unless it's like a 20-minute period and we just have time for a run through. But on a normal rehearsal, if even it's just 5 minutes, it'll do you wonders. You can even take roll, have them in the same formation for fundamentals every day. The drum majors can take roll real quick, during
Right.
that time while you're instructing fundamentals. Okay, so you've
Well,
got a budget time for that.
would you agree it's one of those statements, I don't have time to do this or I can't afford to do that? And you just calmly look back and go, you can't afford not to.
Yeah, you can't afford not to. Yeah,
So
it's
nobody
a
wants to hear, man, your band doesn't march well or sound good. So
Yeah, and it wasn't because of time spent on drill and marching music. It was time not spent on fundamentals.
right,
Okay,
right, right.
so you got to budget time in that. Don't get down on your band for marching poorly if you're not working on marching better. If you're just working drill, I've heard directors say, "Well, we can just work on fundamentals while we're learning drill." That's a rationalization. It just doesn't work. Okay,
Yeah.
you've got to boil it down to marching fundamentals and then apply that to the drill. It never. I've never seen it work well the other way. Okay,
Okay.
um,
So if you'll let me, I
yeah,
think we've kind of probably hit a good midpoint of some of the thoughts that you're having.
yeah,
Let's just run back through these real quick because we talked about a lot of different things. So today, our takeaways would be everything you do, metronome.
yeah,
Um, make sure that you're utilizing every count to get to a set.
hmm,
Don't rush, don't drag, even it out. Utilize all the counts. Subsets, big deal. Stop
yeah.
halfway.
Burns
Um,
time, but a big deal. Burns time, but a big deal.
yeah, but it's worth it, I
Yeah,
guess is the way I
it's
would.
worth it.
Um, again, pulse is key. Got to use that metronome, maintain your tempo. And again, this is one that caught me off guard. The integrity of the drill set comes first, as opposed to did you measure that out and take exactly 22-inch steps.
Yeah, because I'll follow up with that one because the judges don't have drill charts. But go ahead.
Hearsay, they have no idea,
they have no idea.
except they will notice if somebody's a
Out of the
step out
form.
of the
Yeah,
form.
if they're out of the form. Yeah.
And so I love this one too because I think we all try to fire hose our kids with cool techniques and different things that we've learned. Just teach what you need to teach to for them to be successful in your drill.
Right.
Um, and to go along with that, if you mess some of this stuff up, it takes a long time to build a winning tradition. It doesn't take very long to crash it.
Right.
Um, general rule: you might think down 2 grade steps as you're picking your music.
Yep.
Um, and then think of the kids. Got to keep them hydrated, got to keep them rested, got to keep them physically able to do the things that we're asking them to do, which means we have to make the concessions of they need water.
Yeah.
They need to sit down.
Yeah.
They need to not be out here for 3 hours in 104 degrees. Um, cool. And then encouraging them to take ownership and leadership in teaching that with each other. What's one thing you can fix this time when we go through, or uh, more experienced people after a rehearsal going, well, how'd that go for you? Is there something I can help with? Is there got any questions for me? And then finally, I think the things that we talked about uh, is don't be afraid to multitask in your rehearsal,
Yeah.
foundational exercises, playing while you do that stuff. All those things, if we just implement that today, we'll have a better marching band.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And within those fundamentals, also they can only teach the body movement and choreography that you need for your show. If
Yeah,
that makes sense. Sometimes they'll
it
learn a
does.
whole bunch of stuff and then they won't really pull from it. So I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, I know that you've got more in that head of yours. Um, and we want everybody to have an opportunity. Sometimes I think it's wise to say, let's work on this week. If we
Yeah.
if we come back next week, you got some more you can share with us for strategy and that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got lots of ideas. I've got
and,
things
and
that have
we,
actually worked too. I've got both. So it depends on
man,
what you want, Derek.
you did that better than I was going to do it. I'm
Yeah.
going to say,
I have
you
ideas.
got any other mistakes that you've made that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
help
I've
us
got I've
not
got
make?
I've got lots of mistakes.
All right, brother. Well, take it easy this week.
Will
Hope
do.
enjoy your journey in the world of bands and orchestras and choirs and helping people get better at what they do. We appreciate you, sir.
Awesome. It's been fun, man.
All right, bud.